It's showtime. Hey, everyone. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Ashley Bernardi, the CEO and founder of Nardi Media. And as someone who's not only passionate about helping purpose-driven experts share their stories, but also deeply curious about healing practices that go beyond the conventional, I am so excited for today's conversation. And I'm going to get you excited too. I am joined by the brilliant Dr. Jordan Barber. He's not only a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine, he's an author, an educator, a healthcare strategist, and someone who truly understands what it means to create a practice rooted in values, authenticity, and whole person care. He also has a new book, Realigning Medicine. It dropped this year. Could not be more timely. It's at a moment when so many healthcare providers and patients are feeling burned out, disconnected, unsure of where to turn, especially when it comes to conventional medicine. Jordan offers a clear path forward for all, and one that blends Eastern and Western approaches, modern science, and good old-fashioned human connection. So, Jordan, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been so excited about this conversation.
Thanks for inviting me, Ashley. And I think you hit it right on the head there. It's human connection. So having a live presentation is awesome because we can actually connect not just with each other, because we haven't spoken in a while, but also whoever's joining us.
That's right. And I hope anyone who is joining, I want you to know you can drop questions, comments. We want to see them. We want to hear from you. And I've got my whole list of questions too. So Jordan, let's just start from the beginning. How did this all begin for you? What got you interested in acupuncture and Chinese medicine in the first place?
I hate to start on a somber moment, but, all good things usually come from something that is, life-changing. And for me, it was going through 9/11. And I remember escaping from New York, fast forwarding the details. I promised I would do something that mattered with my life because the direction I was going was very corporate. I just didn't feel rewarded. There was a long journey and movement into where I am now, but it started at that moment is, realizing that, I was 21 at the time, that I wanted to actually have some sort of measure of impact on people.
Wow. Okay. From there, what happened? Like what changed? Like, so you got on this 9/11 happened and then you said, okay, I don't want to get into corporate. I want to make an impact. And then you found acupuncture and Chinese medicine.
Yeah, well, I was also sick, not from 9/11 itself, but I was having my own, health issues because I wasn't living right. I didn't know it at the time, but I was living off of food carts in the city and in a financial district. I was late hours, I was out late partying because I was young. All these things. Sleep was like, an option that I wasn't really that interested in. And it was having a huge toll on me. And strange as it is, and I do have a slight spiritual kick to everything. I woke up from a dream one night with the word acupuncture. And I mean, I guess I knew what it was, but this is like 2002, 2003. And actually probably 2002. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I could try that. I haven't tried anything else. Western medicine's kind of failed me at this point. And I didn't know where to go. I was scared. Who am I going to go to? Like, these are needles. I don't like needles. I faint when my blood's taken. So this is not going to be a good idea. And so I found a school and I figured, well, they had a professional clinic. So the people who teach it must be at least safe. I was really scared. I didn't trust it. And I went there and within about a month, about 80% of my health issues were, ameliorated, maybe not gone, but way better than surgeries and everything else I did. So now I was hooked and it allowed me to also reconnect with the spiritual side that I had when I was younger. Because the philosophy of Chinese medicine is the philosophy of life. It's about existence. And it's not necessarily a religious thing. You can be, Christian, Catholic, doesn't matter. It's about what does it mean to be alive? And it allowed me to get in touch with that as opposed to late night raves and sitting in a server room with massive amounts of EMF bombarding me and feeling like I'm going to die. So, yeah.
What a shift for you. I want to talk more about that and everything, but I also want to stop there for folks that are not familiar with acupuncture. Because I know people have heard of it. I'm very familiar. I love it. It helps me heal from many different ailments. What is acupuncture? Because I was trying to explain it to my mom the other day and she's like, oh my God, needles all over. And I'm like, no, but it's not like really like that. It's about the energy that flows in you and the meridians, but you're going to do a much better job explaining it to everyone than I can.
Well, I will say, for every scholar of Chinese medicine you ask, you will get a completely different answer because of the robustness of acupuncture. And really, we call it Chinese medicine, but there's also similar medicines from Korea and Japanese, so it doesn't, do its service. Acupuncture as a profession is an entire system of medicine, acupuncture being just one of the tools. And it's like you said, we talk about energy and everything else, but energy is a way that we describe metabolism and interactions within the body, and not just in the body, but how the body interacts with life, the existence, circadian rhythms, sunlight, sleep, and everything else, as well as human interaction. When we harmonize and balance those interactions, whether cellular or our human interactions, we start feeling better. Our nervous system calms down. So that, and in one nutshell, is one way of describing the system of acupuncture as a system of medicine. But yes, there are the needles. They are very, small. They don't typically hurt.
Nope.
You know, I mean, if an area hurts and we're going into to release the muscle, it's going to feel like a deep tissue massage. You'll feel it, but it kind of hurts so good. This isn't, torture by any means. It's usually quite relaxing. And when I get it done, especially for stress and anything else, I often kind of fall asleep and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
For pain management, you're aware of it, but it's no big deal.
Yeah, that's my experience with it too. And I'll quickly share my story of experiencing acupuncture for the first time. But it was actually in 2022 when I got COVID for the first time. I got it so bad, and I was like a nebulizer, and I just could not and I ended up with pneumonia, and I could not get my chest. Like, I couldn't get it out of my chest. Nothing was helping. I was doing everything. And it was almost like I had to resort to acupuncture because nothing else was working. And I hate that, like, it feels like the last resort when I feel like it should be the first resort, like the first thing you do. So I did it. And like the third time I did, I was like, oh my God, I can breathe again. And then like a week later, I'm running again. And like a week, and then I'm just like, oh my gosh, it was miraculous. My question to you is, like, why isn't Chinese medicine or acupuncture the first thing we turn to? And now that is the first thing I turn to if something happens. But we've been taught to like go to the doctor, get the medication, put a Band-Aid on it, suppress the root cause. Why?
Ooh, I think our profession's been trying to figure out why, but for one, let's start with the good news. We are becoming more accepted. Insurance is starting to cover us.
Yeah.
We are found, especially in urban populations, there's acupuncturists everywhere. But we're not integrated in a sense that while we are integrative medicine, arguably the definition of it, we're not found in the hospitals. We don't do our training in hospitals. Everything we learn separated. So we don't really... allied medicine or standard medicine doesn't know how to use us because they don't have us at their disposal, whereas social workers are everywhere. PTs are everywhere. So they're like, oh, go see the PT. Here, they got to send you to some person's strange office, someplace else that doesn't use the latest computer systems, probably doesn't look at the x-rays or MRIs, and they don't know what's going on. Whereas, they could send you down the hall in the hospital. They could send you to the person next door. But that is changing. And there's an educational crisis in Chinese medicine. And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but the profession has to grow in a more integrative sense if we're going to stay alive. And we are moving in that direction. Otherwise, we're always going to be on the outskirts. And like you said, and the same with me, it's the last thing you go to.
Yeah.
Kind of like, I hope this works. And, in some ways I've become good at, treating terrible things. But it's a lot easier to get people better when you see them early on.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it was like, for me, it was the first time in like 2 months where I finally felt hope that, like, oh my gosh. And now what I've learned is it is the first thing I go to, like, before anything else. And I'm so grateful for that. I have a question. When you say an education crisis within Chinese medicine, do you mean that there's just not enough practitioners available, or do you mean that there's just seems to be a lack of understanding how our society, especially Western society, views it?
So, I mean, I've taught at a few schools and I still hold a position at one. The schools are failing. They're closing. Every year, there's more and more schools closing, partially because these schools are private, for-profit, and there's nothing wrong with for-profit institutions. But if you look at most medical schools, they're part of a larger university system. right? So the
Yeah.
schools that are surviving, like one of the ones that I teach at now, have multiple things. They have nursing programs, they have everything else. And that's where the integration occurs. When you're a small for private place, you have an onboarding class of 8 students for the entire year. You can't cover that overhead that you need for standard education in America. Your Title IX to Title IV, all these different things that have to occur. It's a huge staff and expense. So we need to be found in more, state schools. We need to be founded in more, for-profit but larger university systems, and that also increases the education. Whereas the undergrad education becomes more robust, you have more access to
Mhm.
labs. You know, for my anatomy and physiology, we didn't have wet labs, which means that we didn't actually have cadavers. We had slides, we had all these other things, and we had great resources, but we didn't get the same education that everyone else had. And that
Right.
puts us at a disadvantage. It is changing, and I think that's what's great. But there is a crisis as well.
Right. It's like there's a call to action for the higher education who trains these practitioners to integrate and also innovate in order to kind of bring Chinese medicine into more acceptance, especially here in the United States.
We see it with chiropractic, and we see the state of chiropractic in America. It's very separate.
Yeah.
And we see it with the naturopaths that are growing. They're not as large as us. And in some states, they're actually found in the hospital systems. And other states, the same thing as us, private clinics, student clinics, et cetera, where you don't get that. I never got exposure to trauma. I never got exposure to extremely sick patients. Yet all the classics and stuff talked about when patients were dying.
Hmm.
So I learned about sick people, but I never saw them. Luckily, I, worked with an oncologist and I saw a lot of, complex cases over the time, and I started understanding medicine better. But I was at a disadvantage for anything complex. Healthy people that just had, some chronic fatigue and some muscle aches, sure, I was fine. But, when you were dealing with a real health crisis, I didn't know how to dialogue with other people. I didn't think they wanted to dialogue with me. And they do. And that's the greatest thing right now, with my practice, constantly talking to practitioners and creating care teams and being part of the team.
I
So it
love.
is changing. Yeah.
Yeah, that human connection piece that I do
Mhm.
feel is lacking in Western conventional medicine. I feel like, I mean, in full transparency, something I love about my acupuncturist here in DC, he prays with me before we do acupuncture. Like, I mean, it's the coolest thing ever. And that's just one example, but there is just so much more human connection and compassion. And that alone, I feel, can be immune boosting. At least it is for me. So I
Mhm.
want to talk to you about your book,
Mhm.
Realigning Medicine, because I think it's so relevant right now. Tell us what inspired you to write it and who do you hope picks it up?
So the inspiration, I was teaching practice management at one of the universities I teach at. And I realized the questions I was answering were the same questions I've been answering when I was coaching and helping other people build their practices. And I was like, I'm tired of saying this stuff.
Mm,
So I wrote it. And literally, I didn't think about it being a business thing. I didn't think about anything other than I need to get this stuff out there because there was nothing out there for me.
mhm.
And if this medicine is going to succeed, and I wrote it for integrated practitioners and just allied practitioners, which means people that aren't medical doctors that are doing solo practices, social workers, PTs, doesn't matter, especially the more outside of the insurance industry. Um, if people want to help people, they have to succeed. There's great clinicians, but clinicians are not entrepreneurs. Those are different skill sets.
Mhm.
They can learn it, but you know, they needed something and there was no guide out there. And I wanted to build something to say, hey, I want you to be happy. I want you to thrive. And I want you to not make the mistakes I made. So I wrote the book. It's a money loss,
I love
but I'm
it.
so excited about having it. So
I'm so excited you gave this gift to the world because I think there's so much burnout in healthcare right now. So I'm wondering what you're seeing and why you think so many practitioners do feel stuck and disconnected and what they can do to shift that.
well, I was just on Good Day Atlanta last week, talking about burnout on vacation, which is crazy if you think about it. You're on vacation and you still feel burnt out. So burnout isn't just something that's happening in healthcare. It's a societal issue right now, right? And I mean, we can talk about social political issues that just add added stress to us. But within healthcare, we're stuck in systems that aren't working for us. We're stuck under paperwork, mountains and mountains of paperwork for insurance reimbursement that doesn't actually pay for the labor. You know, I've gotten checks for $13. I live in New York. Like that's, I mean, that's a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So you
Exactly.
know, it doesn't cover the labor to bill. It doesn't cover the software that's hundreds of dollars a month to be able to bill. They're forcing these things on us. So you
Mm,
get burnt out, and then you have to have volume to make up
right.
for that financial loss, which increases your stress. And what you realize is you're no longer connecting.
That's
You're no
right.
longer doing the thing that you wanted, and your outcomes start going down because you can't spend time with your patients to do a proper evaluation to understand who they are. So while my book doesn't talk about how to treat, it talks about how to avoid that burnout by actually doing what you love and building a system around you that works, and perhaps escaping the insurance industry or working in the insurance industry in a way that works for you, you know?
Brilliant. I mean, I hope all practitioners out there, and I know Nardi Media works with so many that like this is a book that is so needed and resonates. I want to flip it over now to your patients. You work with both men and women, but you have a lot of male patients, and I'm curious. It's so interesting to me because my girlfriends and I, we will talk about our health and our ailments and what's working all day long, every single day. It's like the main topic of discussion, but I think it's very different for men. I think they're silent about it. They remain stoic. And I'm just curious, like, what are some patterns or barriers that you see when it comes to men in particular taking charge of their own health?
So my subspecialty, I treat pain, but my subspecialty is pelvic floor dysfunction.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I treat women as well as men, but I've been increasingly more fascinated with treating men
Mm.
because no one is reaching out to them. No one's
Yeah,
helping them. Whereas, like you said, there is awareness of pelvic floor dysfunction amongst women, and there's still way more work to do for women out there. But for men, the male temperament is adaptability. We adapt to everything. That's kind of like how we grew up. That
right.
adaptability means that we ignore things. We don't pay attention to things because it's like, it's just an ache. You
Yeah,
know, I leak a little after I pee. No big deal. I'm getting older. Who cares? I'm not dead. It's fine. Um, and we don't say things. And men, you know, we don't really talk. If you listen to a male conversation, we just talk about certain things that we're interested in, but we don't talk about us as much.
that's right.
You know, it's our conversations are much more object and solution oriented,
Mhm.
generalizing, obviously. And this is changing as men are learning to express themselves more. But, you know, we don't say like, oh, you know, my back's hurting. And we definitely don't talk about our genitalia or
No.
things in the nether regions that are like, oh, this isn't working well, or it hurts when I poop. We don't say that stuff. Meanwhile, we do heavy labor as a profession, which puts hypertonicity on the pelvic floor, which creates so much dysfunction for us. 21% of men will have pelvic floor dysfunction sometime in their lifetime
Wow.
versus 60% of women, and mostly women, they give birth, so they have a higher chance of having issues go wrong there. But about 20 to 21% is like a fraction, somewhere in between there. That's a huge amount of patients that aren't being heard. And then they just like, oh, my back hurts because it might be part of their back, but it's really a pelvic floor. They're not getting the right treatment because it's not being identified.
Wow. So, what is your message to men today who might be listening and they want to take control of their health, like, and they don't even know what if they could have any pelvic floor issues? What do you say to them? Where do they get started?
So read up and then speak up, right? First,
Mm,
read up. Start reading more about your symptoms and add the keyword pelvic floor because back pain could be pelvic floor. Any erectile dysfunction, we know that's huge. We see Viagra and everything else, but you're taking a medication. The medication might be helping, but it might actually be pelvic floor dysfunction. And if you fix that, you don't need the medication, or the medications can be better. One of my selling points is that when you fix pelvic floor dysfunction in men, they have better quality orgasms. That by itself should make you want to, as a man, to Google and figure this stuff out. If you're having any urination issues, you know, we talk about the prostate, but that could be a form of pelvic floor dysfunction leading to benign prostatic hyperplasia, right? As well as all these other things that are going on. So read up and then speak up. Don't be afraid. Go to your doctor and say, hey, I noticed this. Do you think it's this? You know, and you'll probably wind up at pelvic floor PT. And then start looking at integrative approaches, acupuncture, dry needlers like me that specialize in pelvic floor dysfunction. But I work in a care team. I want to work with your pelvic floor PT because it's
I love
learning about how to move. It's learning how to soften everything. I want to work with your urologist. But if you don't speak up, then it's going to get worse and it's a lot harder to treat later on. You don't want to be 70 trying to fix these issues. You want to do it when you're
That's
45.
right. That's right. Okay. That is a great message to men. So men, if you're listening, listen up and speak up. I also want to talk about chronic pain because millions of Americans suffer from chronic pain. This is your specialty. And as someone who's had, I've had back pain issues in the past. I know how debilitating it can be and like life altering. So tell me a little bit about the chronic pain crisis that we have, especially in our country, what you're seeing and what you're seeing works to successfully treat patients.
So obviously I'm biased. So I'm going to say integrative approaches work. But the reason why integrative and conservative based care works is because we have a large opiate crisis or epidemic right now.
Mm-hmm.
When we can do things that either lower the amount of opiates needed or cut a person out of opiates early, because let's say you went on it post-surgical or anything else, this has huge societal impact, right? So the first thing that I see is that we're having a huge impact in an integrative approach, which is using PT, manual therapy, acupuncture, mind-body therapies, vagal nerve therapies, all these different things, which really help with treating pain. But that has a societal impact. And then secondarily, it keeps you from having all these side effects. We call iatrogenic diseases from treatment. You take
Okay.
ibuprofen. Ibuprofen gives you ulcers, right?
Yeah.
If you take Tylenol, you get liver pathologies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take opiates, you might get addicted. Also, it impacts your ability to work or work safely. Secondarily, chronic pain impacts family dynamics.
Yeah.
Right. When you're in pain, you can't mow the lawn. You can't give affection to your loved one or your children because you're grumpy and it hurts and you might be medicated. And it's a huge impact. And then some people lead to, secondary medications or self-medication, alcoholism, et cetera, et cetera. So pain is a major thing that we have to learn how to treat without just giving people hardcore medications.
I love that message so much. And it also makes me think of instead of medication, I feel like the supplement world has like blown up, but like, what are some, I would say, wellness practices, maybe herbal medicine or even habits that you often recommend to your patients just for everyday health?
Well, I mean, the silliest and simplest thing is stretching, which we all don't do, including myself, where I stretch for a minute before I go work out and then I ignore it, So self-care is worth so much more in prevention, right? But otherwise, simple things, you have your omega-3s, which we know we should be taking more that are anti-inflammatories, magnesium, which we're all deficient in, we should be adding. I'm really fascinated with a Chinese herb called Yanhuso or Cordialis. And there's companies now starting to put that into bombs. We call that Chinese aspirin. It's a really great topical analgesic, along with menthol and simple things like Tiger Balm and Icy Hot and all these things that do
Yeah.
work, right? But it's using manual therapy, using acupuncture, using things to cut off the pain signaling that really helps. But also getting good quality sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep, rest, that's when we rest, that's when we digest, that's when we restore our hormones and cut down inflammation, and we don't get enough sleep.
I know we don't, it's like sleep and stretch. It's like this two most obvious things, but we just forget to do it. I'm like, I needed that reminder about stretching today. Cause I'm like you, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go for my run. I get home and then kids and life, but stretching is so important. All right. So Dr. Jordan, I could talk to you so much more. I want to do another LinkedIn Live with you. But for right now, tell everyone who's listening and will be watching the replay, where can we find out information about you, the work that you're doing, and your new book?
So I could be found on practically any social media forum with J Barber, first initial, last name, LAC, stands for licensed acupuncturist. And you can find me anywhere as TikTok, et cetera, et cetera. As far as my website, drjordanbarber.com is my main website where you can see my media appearances, do telewellness consults. and also coaching and consulting if you're an integrative practitioner. And if you're in New York City, specifically Manhattan and the Upper West Side, drbarberclinic.com is my clinic's website, where it's a boutique practice where I focus on pain and pelvic floor dysfunction.
Amazing. All right, Dr. Jordan Barber, this has been an awesome conversation. We have to do it again. For everyone that has watched and will be watching, thank you so much. I hope everyone got some amazing nuggets from this conversation today. And Dr. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to the next time.
Thank you, Ashley, for having me. It's been great.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.